All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wisconsin Maple Hour. I'm Jeremy Solon. I am the Maple Syrup Project Manager with UW-Madison Division of Extension, and joined tonight by Beth Peterson, who's the Assistant State Conservation Engineer with USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, as well as Bethany Reinholtz, who's the Project Manager with GDS, a consulting firm, and does a lot of energy efficiency work with maple syrup producers. So super excited to have them tonight to talk about energy efficiency and maple syrup operations. Before we jump in, just a couple of logistics. I have a few questions for our guests. We'll talk about those. I guess it'll take about 30 minutes to talk about that, and then we'll open up for questions, and we'll obviously start with any energy efficiency related questions, but if there are other questions beyond that, we can talk about those as well. And then we'll wrap up with just a couple of quick updates, upcoming events, things like that. So that'll be the plan moving forward here. So welcome, Bethany and Beth. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm just going to close this poll. All right. So to get us started, Beth and Bethany, what drew you into this work within kind of energy efficiency conservation work, and maybe tell us a little bit about kind of your interaction with maple syrup producers, and we'll start with Beth.
Okay. Yes. Hello. Thank you for the invite. As Jeremy said, I'm Beth Peterson. I'm the Assistant State Engineer for NRCS. So my main job is not energy. That's not the main line of work that I do. I'm going to stop my video. Things are going screwy on my video end. So I'm going to stop my video, and just hopefully my voice is coming through all right.
Yep, sounds good.
So I primarily I actually have a degree in civil engineering. So I work with the maple syrup producers because NRCS about 5-10 years ago really got into the energy end of things. And so we started working with some of our non-traditional producers, non-traditional landowners, and maple syrup being one of them, or maple producers being one of them. So that really is where I started. I have worked with probably about 5 or 6 producers over the years doing anything from reverse osmosis to evaporators. I've gotten to learn the process a lot more than I had in the past, but definitely maple syrup was not my main career direction that I was working on, but I've really enjoyed it. It's a great community, and yeah, so I've only been, again, working with the maple syrup producers for about 10 years though.
Excellent. That's good. Thanks, Beth. And how about you, Bethany?
Hello, thanks for having me. So I am with GSD Associates, and I started working with producers about 15 years ago when I got hired at GDS after I finished my master's degree, and actually went to school for energy efficiency, renewable energy, and policy. So it worked out. I didn't necessarily plan to work in agriculture, but it's always been a big interest of mine. So it just worked out really well that I was able to tie my passion for agriculture into my passion and my degree for energy efficiency and renewable energy and such. But the NRCS, like Beth said, and USDA's got a really big interest in energy efficiency and stuff about 10 or 12 years ago. And GDS actually were the consulting firm that got hired to kind of pilot out ag energy management plans. So me and my team actually did the first ag energy management plans for the NRCS to kind of see, is this something worthwhile that we want to start promoting? And then a couple of years later, it was nationwide. And I've been, even before that, I had been working in agriculture energy efficiency. So I kind of jumped into the deep end of the pool, but it's been really fun. And you learn something new every day because everyone does something just a little bit different.
Yeah, that's
so
for sure.
I have been doing this about 15 years now.
Okay, excellent. And Bethany, do you work statewide or beyond that?
So I work across the country.
Okay.
A lot of my work is in the Midwest. And then I do a lot of work in Georgia and Delaware as well. But a lot of Midwest states, and that especially when it comes to, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. And then we do a lot of work as well in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, where there's a lot of small maple operations. But then I've had quite a few very large ones, especially when you get to Michigan. So
excellent.
As Bethany indicated, she's doing energy plans for NRCS, and that encompasses everything from a dairy to just a cropping operation all the way to maple syrup. So it's a wide variety that both of us are working on.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. So maybe Bethany, if you want to start with this one, since you work so closely with maple syrup producers in particular, what do you see as kind of the primary opportunities to increase energy efficiency in maple syrup operations?
So there's actually quite a few. I'm going to actually share my screen here if I can. Let's see. And then I can kind of give folks, hopefully, or not. I feel like I have a lot of stuff up, but I can't find it.
It should be, you see that you have a green button down on the bottom?
Yes.
Maybe. Does that one work? Looks like you have the ability to, at least on my end, but.
The ability, but will it show up for me?
Yeah.
In one of my maybe, oh, here we go. Hopefully this pops up and see what happens here. So hopefully my screen is going to show up.
Success.
Yep.
So there's quite a few really good opportunities, and there's a couple of really good websites for people if they want to kind of check things out. The first one is this energy self-assessment through the USDA that will let you kind of go through all these different conservation tools, including maple syrup, and give you some ideas of what's good, what's not good, what might work for me, what might not work for me, and that kind of stuff. But when you get in there, you can see different opportunities like preheaters and economizers, heat exchangers. I think the top two by far would be reverse osmosis as number one, because even I would say 10 years ago, it was a little trickier for smaller operators because of the cost, but now the cost has really come down and they've started making so many sizes. It's such a great way to pull a lot of water out with very little energy. And so that's a really, really great efficiency opportunity. And then for smaller folks who don't necessarily want to buy a whole new evaporator, retrofitting a wood-fired arch to get some extra airflow in there, tighten it up, and really maximize the combustion efficiency is a really low cost option. I've seen people do that for $500 and get significant increases in their efficiencies. So, but there are a lot of different things, and there's some really great information here through the USDA and then NRCS if people kind of want to dig into some of the opportunities a little deeper.
Excellent. Yeah, that's super helpful. Beth, anything you want to add to that?
No, I would second what she's saying. ROs
Yeah.
are what I've seen the majority of the systems when they want to add something to really make an impact. The RO system, the reverse osmosis system, is really what they look at. And those tools are very useful. It at least gives you a place to know if there's a place that you can start looking at. I think those are really good tools at the agency. That's a national level, those tools were produced.
Yeah, the ROs are definitely pretty amazing from a time saving and energy saving standpoint. I know that. I'm curious if folks who are here, if you should be able to find a little reaction button down on the bottom, but how many of you currently have a RO system? You can select raise your hand or any of those kind of things. You can find that. Maybe not anybody yet, but
only one.
okay.
Ron raised his hand. Yeah.
So maybe just one so far. So this is a good place to start, definitely. Yeah. So I guess maybe Beth, talk a little bit about the programs that are available to start with. So
sure.
Bethany showed us some of the kind of areas, but yeah, get into the programs a little bit.
Sure. So NRCS has it's EQIP, EQIP. It's an incentive program that after you receive an audit and it's shown that this is a resource concern, this is a problem, and this is the practice product that's going to improve your efficiency and help that resource concern, you can apply for EQIP. And it's an incentive. It's a flat rate that you get, but you apply at your local NRCS USDA office. They have one sign up every year. Sometimes there's a second one, depending on if we have extra money available. Many times it goes into a specific pot of money, but that's NRCS's main funding source. And again, you get a flat rate, and that's determined on a yearly basis. That the economists mess around with the costs each year, and they do go up depending on how the economy is working and what the cost of the product is. But on the maple syrup side, the different practices, the different products, so it's a reverse osmosis system. We have kind of a typical cost for it. If you spend twice as much for your product, you're only going to still get the same amount, or you can spend half of that, but it's the product that's called out in your audit is what then you would be needing to buy so that you can get the efficiencies that are noted in the audit. Mm-hmm. So that's the main program. And our sign up this year, and maybe I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the application deadline is November 4th, but an energy audit would need to be written by then. But you can also sign up for an energy audit during that program sign up. Mm-hmm. So we're 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, that you can still go and I guess it is only about 2 weeks from now. Yeah. 3? I don't know. About 3. Yeah. It's 3 weeks. But you can sign up to get an incentive payment to help you write the audit, and Bethany and others can write that audit for you. And then next year you could sign up for the practices within the audit, or you can get the audit written on your own and then turn it into the agency. And either way, we review it, make sure that we've got everything that we need. You can pay for it on your own to expedite the process, or you can sign up for it and then sign up the next year for the practices. So okay. Cool. Kind of how our program works specifically. Solar panels and things of that sort, I know that was renewable energy in general. NRCS really doesn't go down that road. I know there are other energy, and Bethany can probably tell you more. There are other energy grants out there that are more appropriate for those kind of practices.
Okay, cool. So yeah, maybe Bethany, you want to start with the audit process and kind of what that is like, and kind of how long it takes as well, and kind of get people thinking about that. And then we can jump into solar in a little bit too.
Sure. So when I get a call from a producer that they're interested in audit, first thing I do is get a little bit of background and detail on their operation, just to make sure that this is something that's going to be worth their while. I never want to show up at someone's site and say, there's nothing I can do for you, and you're still going to have to pay me. So that's a terrible thing. So we always kind of go over the info, the background. What are you doing? How are you doing it? What are you interested in? That kind of stuff. And then if they want to move forward, they let me know, and we meet at the site, so wherever the location is, and do a walkthrough, get the notes, take some pictures, get some background information, find out again, what are you interested in improving? Are there certain things that you look at and say, I wish there was a better way I could do this, just to kind of find out those options. And then I go back to the office, run a bunch of calculations, and put together a really long report. That report, though, does say, here's where you are. Here's where all your energy is going. And it breaks it down by, this much is going to evaporator. This much is going to your bottling. This much is going to finishing of, whatnot, or your lights or your space heating and water heating. And then the next section says, here's all the different opportunities that I found that you could save some energy. And we'll break those out piece by piece with estimated costs and then the payback. And that payback is based on your current fuel prices. So whatever your current electric rate is, if you're using fuel oil or propane, natural gas, whatever it is, we break it out that way so that it's a realistic number. If you guys have quotes, we always like to use your actual quotes from your equipment dealers to have a really good idea of the costs. But then with that report, we get that to you, and we also get it to the NRCS, and they go through it, make sure we're not missing any information. And from there, you take that report and you can work with like Beth or whoever your local NRCS office is to get that application going to say, well, reverse osmosis looks like it is a really good idea. Or maybe my 52-year-old evaporator needs to be replaced with something that's really efficient. And I want to go that route. Or maybe both options are really good for your site. And then you work with the NRCS, or maybe you apply to the USDA for REAP funding if you have some kind of out of the box interesting project that you want to see if you can get funding for. Or, if you're looking at something simple like hot water heating or space heating or lighting, you could maybe have a utility or a state program that can also offer some funding. So we do include at the back of our audit reports, at least, all the places that we find for you based on your location where you could find some funding to help you kind of get in that direction and not just kind of hang all your hopes on one program, because maybe lights are a really surefire thing to do, and you could get some funding really quickly through your utility or a state program.
Yeah, that's great. And the audit, the cost of the audit, is that kind of like a set price, or is that based on size of operation, or how does that work?
So generally it's based on size of operation. If I'm going to an operation that's got 100 taps and, a very small evaporator versus somebody who's got, 6 different parcels of land and 25,000 taps, and maybe they're processing in 3 different sites, that's going to be a different price. So we definitely break out the price based on kind of how big you are. And before I would show up on site, you'd have a written quote in hand, so you know how much it's going to be. And then we generally try to always get audits turned around within 30 days of meeting with the producer. That way everything's fresh in our mind as we're working on it, and you get things done in a timely manner. And by the time you get the audit, you still remember what we talked about, hopefully, during that site visit.
Cool. That's helpful.
And as for us, the price that we are willing to pay for those audits to be written does vary by what we call them as enterprises. Maple syrup would be an enterprise. If it was an enterprise, if you had 2 different things going on at the farm, 2 different, like you had a dairy as well as the maple syrup, and the whole site was getting evaluated, you'd have 2 enterprises. And then we do a small, medium, and large, depending on different things. Be it like for maple syrup, it's going to be a small enterprise just because most of them are, not always, but that would be typical that it would fall into a small enterprise. And if you had one small, I'm quoting from last year, from this past year, NRCS would pay you as a landowner $2,000, and then whatever it costs with Bethany, that's between the 2 of you. You get $2,000 no matter what it costs from her.
Okay. And you mentioned that landowners don't necessarily have to go through that process of asking for the funding. They could just pay for it on their own.
Absolutely.
But is there a kind of a list of contractors that folks need to use, or is it kind of open as long as they create the kind of report that's needed for NRCS to approve? And of course, we know Bethany does a fantastic job and is one of the approved contractors.
I'm going to give her a pat on the back. She does.
Yeah.
She does a lot of our work. I'm not going to lie, but there are others who do our work as well. was until this year a list. They're called technical service providers.
Okay.
Last year, NRCS did a modification at the national level, and those energy audits do not require a specific person to write them, but, and that's a huge but, those individuals who have written those in the past are going to, in my opinion, you're going to pay less for them to do it because they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There is a specific code that you have to follow when you're writing it. So they know what that is. They know how to write it. They know what we're looking for. They're going to be able to do it more in a more expedited fashion. That's my personal opinion. It is not required, though, going forward that someone specific writes it, but it still has to have all that information in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And are the local NRCS offices the places where landowners could potentially get some recommendations of energy auditors?
We can't give out recommendations.
Yeah.
That our hands are tied. We can't show preference. I'm not sure how long our technical service provider lists on our website will be up, but I know it is up at this point.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation at this point. As those certifications expire, that list is going to shrink. But at this point, I would recommend going on to our website, searching up technical service providers and looking under maple syrup. And that's, or not under maple syrup, under energy audits. It's farmstead energy audits. I can look it up specifically, but it's an energy audit that you're looking for, an energy audit writer. And that's where I would be recommending right now. Honestly, NRCS in Wisconsin is looking for a way to be able to keep a list of everybody who is actively turning in plans so that we do have something to give the landowners. We haven't nailed down exactly what we're going to have because this was a national change that they've pulled on us in the last 6 months and we're still adjusting.
Okay. Yeah. That's good to know. I have some ideas about that, but I won't share them right now.
I do too, but I won't share either.
Yeah. Cool. So Beth, maybe.
But do be careful. Do be careful. I guess I put a warning out. There are energy companies that are willing to write audits, but not all those audits will meet the requirements that we're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have someone write it, make sure it's the NRCS office should be able to give you a clear guidance of what it needs to meet in order for it to be accepted for our payment.
Yeah, that's a good kind of recommendation. And I suppose one of the ways to do that would be to ask if they've done past audits that have been used by NRCS.
I would absolutely do that.
Yeah.
I would absolutely ask an audit writer if they've written any for NRCS before you were to go through them, because otherwise you might be their guinea pig, which is, in my opinion, will almost guarantee you're paying more unless they're just going to give you a great deal, but it's going to be a lot more hassle, a lot more time.
Yeah, cool. Good deal. And we know Bethany's got that all covered. So that's that's a good thing to know. Bethany, maybe you touched on this a little bit and Beth mentioned it as well, but for renewable energy programs on farms and maple syrup operations, kind of what are the potential pathways for funding that you're familiar with?
So right now, if somebody was looking for renewables, I would tell them, one, consider the USDA REAP program, because you can put in a project that will cover, a 25% cost share as a grant, or if you're looking for a grant loan combination, that's another option with REAP. So it's a really good opportunity. The low interest loans are very low interest. And then another option is also to consider your utility programs or state programs. If you're in Wisconsin, Focus on Energy is doing solar and other renewables. If you're doing a smaller project, it's a relatively easy incentive program to apply for. If you're doing something really large, it's kind of an annual or biannual program and more competitive. But if you're doing something smaller, it's usually pretty easy. So there's a couple options.
Excellent.
And just as a side note, that's through ARS, the Ag Research Service is where the REAP grants are. There are certain practices or projects, we can't overlap federal money with federal money, So you could do both the REAP grant and NRCS, but the focus on energy, we have lots of clients, lots of landowners who do both programs.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Yeah, excellent. Good deal. All great information. So maybe last question. We talked a little bit about kind of process for projects, obviously starting with an audit and then moving into implementation. But where do you recommend people start? If a maple syrup is interested, kind of where's a point for them to connect with and get started?
I would be going into your local NRCS office. Most of those offices are located in your county seat of each county. If you don't know where they are, on our USDA NRCS website, it has an office location from every county across the state, across the nation, honestly. But I would be going in there to ask them, tell them that you're interested and where do I proceed? And they're going to tell you what the requirements of that audit are. What are the, or they might direct you to the area engineers. That's normally who is working on these. That's why I'm your lucky individual who comes. This really falls under the engineering realm, and there aren't enough energy plans being done at each county that they become experts. So typically they'll push you up to the area engineer, and they'll work with you, tell you what the requirements are, and tell you where to get started. If you want to go and get paid for the audit through NRCS, do not start that process until you have a contract with us. That is a huge stopper in the process. If you've already gotten the audit written, you can't bring it in and go, okay, I'm ready to get paid, or I'd like to sign up to get this paid for. Everything has to be done after we have a contract with you. That includes after you have an audit written and you sign up for practices. The practices cannot be purchased before you have a contract with us for those. Until that money is obligated, that purchase can't be made. So the first thing I would be doing, if you're interested in getting an audit through NRCS, for us to help you pay for it, definitely go to the county office and apply for that. Let them know you're signing up for the audit. Make sure it's clear that you're not trying to sign up for the practices. If you're interested in doing the audit on your own, I'd be telling you to go to the website and look for a technical service provider, someone like Bethany or GDS that can write them for you. And you can contact them directly. You don't need to work through NRCS at all if you're not looking for payment for the audit. And then when that is done, as she said, normally if you communicate that with her that you're looking for NRCS funding, they will send it to us. The audit writers will send it to us along with you and make sure that we're all on the same page. And then after that audit is written, whether it's by yourself or through NRCS, then again, you need to sit down with your local field office and decide which of those practices you're looking at actually implementing. The audit writers do a nice job of showing you their payback. They show, yep, this is the cost of the practice. This is how much energy and money you're going to save by putting this practice in. So in 4.2 years, you'll have it paid back. And those are all simple paybacks without any kind of incentive payments. So if you come through EQIP, obviously that payback, your timeline is going to be even faster. So then you bring the audit into the NRCS office, say, yep, this is what I'm looking at doing. I want this one, and this is what I want to do. You sign up for EQIP, and it's a competitive sign up. So there's no guarantee that you will get funded, but you get into the pool that has a potential of getting funded. Upfront, they will tell you what kind of financial incentive that you'll be eligible for. And before you say, all the way through this point, you are not tied down to anything. If you are selected, the local office will come to you and say, this is what you've been selected for. Would you like to proceed? Only at that point, when you sign the contract, are you under any obligation to do anything with us. Up until that point, you can walk away and there's no penalty whatsoever. After you do the contract with us, then you install it. we verify, we'll get a plan for you, you'll install it, you'll verify that, yep, the right practices were installed, we pay for it, and off we roll. So that's really the process from beginning to end.
Yeah, excellent. Bethany, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think she's got it nailed down.
Yeah, I guess the only thing would be if landowners weren't looking to have EQIP fund the audit, they could come directly to an auditor like you. And so is that just to reach out to to you, and then,
Right.
start a communication
So
path to get things going?
It'd pretty much be the same process, except you wouldn't need to work with NRCS first. You could come straight to somebody like me, get a quote, get that audit done. And then as long as whoever's doing that audit knows it's for NRCS, they should still send it to the NRCS, copy them on it when they send you that audit report. That way everyone's in the same loop. If NRCS has a question on the audit, they know the person, they've got a quick connection to the person who did the audit, and they can reach out. And it kind of keeps everyone just on the same page.
Yeah. Excellent. That's super helpful. So I think I will stop.
Can I add one more thing in there?
Yeah,
just for timeline. When you apply for a practice or for an audit, like November 4th is the deadline for the application deadline for this coming sign up. You may not know that you're funded until February. And the contract might not be obligated till April. So, I mean, March and April. So realize that the USDA has a timeline, and don't come in expecting to install this next month. Signing up for this deadline, if you have a completed audit and you're coming in for practices, there is a chance that you could get it installed by next spring. It's gonna be a push.
Yeah.
Because that's the timeline that it runs. We don't rank it until the beginning of February is when our applications will be ranked to each other, and then we'll find out who is funded. If you're funded, we can get the ball rolling really quick to get that contract written, but we need to know that. So and each year that timeline is very similar. So when you get to that point of getting a practice installed, and obviously most of the maple syrup producers are in a rush. They want that installed so that we can use it for this season, because we don't want to wait for another season. And so make sure that you're talking to those field offices and they know that, hey, I want to purchase this. I need my contract written by March, whatever, so that I can get it installed before my SAP starts running.
Yeah.
So just make sure that communication, Bethany is absolutely right. That communication is huge in dealing with the landowner, the audit writer, and the field offices.
Yeah, and I think that that's a key too, is if you know you're really interested in something and you'd like to do it sooner than later, that's one of the reasons a lot of folks that I work with pay out of pocket for audits instead of waiting for funding from the NRCS, because they know, sure, you apply by November, you get your audit done in, let's say, April or May, but now you're still waiting until the next season before you get equipment, versus you potentially could have things installed up to a year sooner if you pay out of pocket. So it depends on how important is that equipment to you, and what's the payback. Is it worthwhile to just pay for that out of pocket for that audit? And even the payment rates, if you talk to your NRCS office, they'll be able to give you an idea, a ballpark of at least what is that payment rate right now. Maybe it won't be exactly the same next year, but at least you have a ballpark to have an idea. As it might just be worthwhile to pay for that audit out of pocket to keep things moving along if it's a priority for that new equipment.
Yeah.
Agreed. It's a timeline. We understand it's a timeline. It's just part of the world that we live in with the government.
Yeah.
And it stretches the whole process out for an entire extra year.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good point. I think too, of, thinking ahead a little bit for maple syrup producers of where you might want to be in 2 or 3 or 5 years, even, to be able to start that process. But, the opportunity to shorten that down a little bit if you just go directly to developing an audit on your own. But or paying for it on your own anyway. So yeah, that's super helpful. I know I learned a lot and he answered a lot of my questions about the program. So that's awesome. But I do want to open it up at this point to folks who might have questions as well. So you can either put those in the chat, or if you want to unmute and ask that question directly, we can do that. And we'll have a little bit of time for questions here. So jump on in if anybody's interested. And Bethany, if you want to throw your contact information in the chat, that'd be awesome. And Beth, if there's anything else, I shared the website to find the local offices, the field offices, but if there's anything else you want to add, feel free to throw that in chat.
I can put my own personal contact in as well. That's not a problem.
Great. So any questions?
I've got a question.
Yeah. Hi, John. How's it going?
Yeah, good. One thing I'm curious about is, would it be possible for, well, I guess, how does one go about becoming a registered TSP with the NRCS for doing something like an energy audit?
As I said, the national offices put a couple twists in it right now. It's a procedure. It's a long procedure. If you are interested, I would talk to you one-on-one. There's a whole list of things that you need to go through. Bethany could tell you better than I can, but definitely for the audit writers, they have to be submitting, there's a bunch of stuff beforehand, but then you need to submit a couple of plans for approval before you're technically certified, or you get that you're certified and then you have to do a couple plans. I'm not sure exactly of that front and back, but again, as they put that twist in there so we have 3 types of plans now. We used to only have 1. They have twisted things around, and we used to have CAPs, conservation activity plans. We now have DIAs and a bunch of acronyms because that's what the USDA is really good at. There are 3 types of plans though, and the type of plan that the energy audit falls into is the one of the 3 that they don't require a TSP to write. So an energy audit specifically, as of right now, does not need to be a TSP, so there is no process to go through. But there are other plan types that do require a TSP, and that process is not easy, I'm not gonna lie. But if you would like that, please I put my email in the chat. Please contact me directly and I will put you in contact with the right person who will get you down that right road.
All right, will do. Thank you, Beth.
It's not, I would say, I don't even want to go into it because I don't know what has changed and what hasn't because of this happening in the last 6 months.
So Jeremy, we were talking about that, Jonathan's with WCAC. I don't know if you've met Jonathan before, but as a service we could provide to tribal producers, we were looking at that option. So yeah, Beth, we appreciate that. Find out more about it. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Holly, I don't know through WCAC if you've worked with Holly at all. Eric Allness used to work through that. Did you work with Eric at all?
We work with Eric, yeah.
Yeah.
And when you say Holly, you're talking about Holly Gimbel?
Holly Giambi.
Giambi, yeah. Yeah, I see her name in a lot of emails. She's our new TSP
coordinator. Yeah,
okay.
She's our new TSP coordinator, and that's who I would be recommending you talk to.
Oh, great, thanks.
Okay.
Cool. Sam has a question in chat asking about wood, and specifically, is there a way to get more out of the wood that he burns, and is there's a preferred wood? I don't know, Bethany, any insight into that?
So yeah, so I just put a note in the chat, but by far the key thing is when you want dry wood. Wasting energy burning off all the water in wood is a huge waste. So first thing is make sure you're using seasoned wood, not something you just cut this year. When I say seasoned, I want it drying for at least a full year, if not 2. So good dry wood, and the harder your wood is, the higher fuel content you're going to get out of, the higher heating you can get. So burning a bunch of pine is not very efficient, especially if it's wet pine, versus if you've got the potential for maple or oak or one of the hardwoods that's dry, you'll get a lot more heat value out of those hardwoods that are dry. So, and I know a lot of people will burn kind of anything they can get their hands on, including pallets and, you know, whatever scraps floating around. And you can do that. It's just not an efficient, effective way to get hot heat coming up. Yeah. So dry, hard wood.
Yeah, that's great. And Bethany, I think you started maybe with one of the practices that was around kind of airflow through evaporators as well.
Yeah. So another way is to, a lot of especially older evaporators, they don't necessarily have very well sealed or good airflow through that combustion chamber. And you can actually add a airflow, push extra air through that chamber with like a draft induction. And it's a pretty cheap thing to do, just even out of pocket, $500, $1,000 maybe, now that everything is, you know, doubled in price in the last couple of years. But draft induction, getting better air movement through there, so you get more full combustion in that chamber, will give you better heat and better burning of your wood as well.
Nice. And I'd say another, just from personal experience, splitting wood, one helps it to dry, but also you're increasing that surface area for burning, and you're going to get a more efficient, a hot, efficient burn onto that too. So another part of the wood that you burn specifically. But good, thank you for that. Any other questions? I don't see anything in chat. We'll hold on to the uncomfortable silence for a little bit, just to see if anybody has anything.
Yeah, well, just throw in here quick. Like I mentioned at the beginning when I shared my screen, there is some really good information on efficiency opportunities. Some of them get to be expensive when you're talking about a whole new evaporator, so you can incorporate, you know, preheaters and things like that. But there are other options that are pretty cost effective, like the draft induction, preheating, the sap, different things like that, especially when, you know, you've got waste heat going up your flue. Well, if your sap can come down that flue and get pre-warmed up before it comes into your pan by using that waste heat, you know, that's a really great opportunity. Not everything has to be a new $20,000 evaporator. Some things can be low cost and very effective and really save you quite a bit of energy. And especially with, you know, how much everything's costing these days. Somebody just told me that they bought BioBlocks to heat their house with this year because wood got too expensive, which kind of blew my mind that wood was that expensive to burn in for their house heating, that they're buying BioBlock.
Wow.
So
that's crazy. Yeah. Beth, any final thoughts?
Not really. I told you to go to the local field office, and that's where I really do want you to go, but I will open it up that if people run into roadblocks or issues, and as I said, the field offices are not real comfortable with energy as a whole, just because soil, water, that's what our roots are in, figuratively. So that's what we do as an agency. So if you run into issues, please reach out to me and I can make sure that you get in touch with someone who can help you for your local area.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
If anyone has questions, you know, I don't have to be the one who does your audit, but I'm always happy to help guide you along the way and get you some extra info as well. So feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Appreciate that. All right. So
there's a question in the in the chat that says, could we apply for help installing an existing windmill and tower that is an electric generator? I don't think through NRCS we're working on anything of that sort. I don't know if there are other opportunities out there, Bethany.
I would say if you're looking for renewables, you want to talk to someone at USDA. or somebody at your utility, or like if you're from Wisconsin, go to Focus on Energy and see what they can do. Because that's probably going to be your easiest route to getting renewables installed in some sort of incentive.
And Bethany,
And when she says USDA, she's not talking NRCS USDA.
No,
Yeah.
I'm talking,
She's talking ARS.
rural development.
Sorry, for the REAP. Yeah,
Yep.
rural. Yeah, rural development
Rural
also
development.
would be potential. Yep.
Yeah. And as a reminder, are there rural development offices at the county level as well? Is that true?
There are, but not in every county.
every,
There are
okay.
rural development offices that cover every county, but they are not located in every county.
They can be regional. Yeah. So you should be able to, folks should be able to track down those too. So.
Yep. And if you go to your local NRCS FSA office, they can get you in contact with the right RD office.
Yeah. Excellent. Good deal. All right, so to close, a couple of things. I'm going to launch a little kind of exit poll, just a little bit of feedback about this session, so you'll see that. And then a couple of reminders. This is our extension maple syrup program site. So this is where we continue to post events and updates, programs for producers, resource managers, all that kind of stuff. So this is a good place to find information, and you'll find energy efficiency type work as well. And then just a reminder, the International Maple Syrup Conference is coming up the end of this month, and you can still do registration for this on a daily basis as well if you can't attend the whole conference. So that's on wismaple.org, hosted by the Wisconsin Maple Syrup Producers Association. And lots of events going on there, including we're partnering with WITCAC and several other partners to host a tribal sugaring meeting and producer meeting there as well. So if that's of interest and relevance to any other folks on the Zoom tonight, we'd be happy to share more information about that as well. But with that, I think we will wrap up. Beth and Bethany, thanks so much. Like I said, I learned a ton about the programs that are available and kind of approaches. So I really appreciate that. And I think this is hugely beneficial for maple syrup producers in the state. So really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. And thanks for being here. We'll wrap up here, but of course, if any questions afterwards, you have Beth and Bethany's contact information, but you can always get a hold of me as well. And our next Maple Hour will happen in November. We're still working on some of the details, but probably focus on one of the tribal maple syrup producers, working with Red Cliff right now to talk about their programs. So watch for an announcement about that soon, and hopefully we'll see you at the Maple Syrup Conference. But enjoy the evening. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.